Are you ready to rewind? Take a nostalgia-filled ride back to a simpler time. It's Acid Wash Memories, a retro pop culture celebration. And now your hosts, Joe Murata and Michael Quinn.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 86 of Acid Wash Memories, a retro pop culture celebration. Today, it's all about the joy of painting and Bob Ross. I am Joe Murata, alongside my happy little co-host, Michael Quinn. How you doing there, Michael?
Howdy doody.
Howdy doody to you. Folks, if this is your first time joining us here, we are a retro pop culture celebration. Each week is something completely different in the world of retro pop culture, and I can't see who wouldn't be interested in hearing about Bob Ross.
Yeah, Bob Ross,
Remember
the
him?
Paint Man.
The Paint Man. But if you're not, we do have 85 other episodes available. Where, Quinn?
In the archives.
In the archives. So I'm sure you'll find something. You'll have a lot of broad strokes that we go with on this show,
yeah,
Quinn.
that.
Stop it.
We're going to paint you a picture in just a second here of the joy of painting and Bob Ross. But before we do, I want you guys to float on over to Twitter at AWM Podcast and follow us there. And you can also join our Facebook group, which is very creatively titled, Quinn, Acid Washed Memories.
Yes.
That's
we
the
didn't
name.
even go for like an abbreviation or anything like that.
No, it's just the full name of the show.
Just the full thing.
That's
the
just
full
what
Monty.
the full Monty is over there. So
full
if you
paint.
if you want to see the full paint, get a good landscape, to see what's going on over there. Go to Acid Watch Memories on Facebook, and we will let you in. I'm excited about this one, Quinn, because over the last 10 years, Bob Ross and The Joy of Painting, which is the program, for those of you not familiar, maybe on the other side of the pond, he has become, I would dare say, ubiquitous
I'd
in
say
pop
more
culture.
like an icon.
I think icon, yeah.
Iconic or something.
I think you're right.
I don't know. He just represents like a weird, like a subculture of calmness.
A subculture of calmness. I like that.
I don't know any other way to describe it. This peaceful man that paints and talks softly to you for 30 minutes.
Hi, I'm glad you could join me today. Today we're going to do a wonderful little painting, and I really think you're going to enjoy this one. So I tell you what, let's don't waste any time.
And you tell you what, a lot of people that grew up in the 80s or 90s that had access to PBS, this site of this mild-mannered, quirky painter, Bob Ross, it did bring comfort to people. You're right. I was thinking about why. Now, I'm going to ask you out of the gate here, did you watch him when it was like new? Because it was on into the mid-90s.
I think I caught a couple of episodes, but it was always like very boring to me as a child. I did not get it. I don't understand it. I have definitely seen Bob Ross episodes like when, this live streaming came about of Bob Ross. But other than that, I mean...
You were aware of?
I was aware of, but I didn't really care. Honestly, the fact that he had an afro and it was like the 90s was like really confusing to me. I was like, is this from like the 70s?
Well,
what is this?
It was also shot like it was from the 70s, too.
I was like, is this something our parents watch and it's just on reruns?
No, I get it, Quinn. I did watch it when it was new. I remember even as early as 1990, I was a big Bob Ross fan, and my grandparents, I asked them for Christmas, please get me paints, and they got me Bob Ross-related paints. I was a big fan.
MTV, the land of happy little trees.
But 30 years after the last episode, as of press time, Joy of Painting aired, which was 1994, the legacy of Bob Ross lives on. And I want to be clear here, by no means, and people that know this, because there's been documentaries about him and things, by no means was his show, The Joy of Painting, the first show of its kind.
No.
But it was definitely the most popular. But it was not even the first how-to paint like this show, which we'll cover.
I feel like it's not really a how to paint show. It never really was. It's just him painting.
Right.
Like he'll throw in tips here and there, but it's not like he's giving you like a step-by-step, this is how you paint this picture.
No, and that's the funny part. In theory, I guess nominally it's supposed to be an instructional, but I would wager that 99.8% of the people that watched it were sitting on their couch with their hand down their pants or whatever, like eating chips, you know what I'm saying?
Drunk or high or something.
Or a kid like me, in 1990, just like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
But it is very much in the vein of the 50s and 60s TV type show. Even though this was an 80s and 90s show, it reminds me, and this is like a weird thing, I don't know if anyone's ever said this before. It might not be an original thought, Quinn. It reminds me a lot of The French Chef with Julia Child.
Yeah, it's definitely like, I think that's probably like where it came from as far as, if you know anything about Julia Child, it's like what she did on the air, she was like the first, right? Like that's why she gets so much credit, is because there was like nobody really thought a show like that would, like, who would watch this? Just somebody cooking?
Exactly.
She had to fight to get the show. She like did most of it. The first season is like pretty much her own production
in her
because
own
like,
kitchen,
like
isn't it?
Barely anyone would help. They had no budget. She brought in her own kitchen utensils and stuff.
Exactly.
Poulet poêlé à l'estragon. Chicken baked in a covered casserole with tarragon and potatoes. It's a delicious dish that we're going to do now on the French chef.
Did she know Andre the Giant? It seems like she would.
She didn't, but
she could have.
She might have.
She might have.
Don't worry about Julia Child.
Anyway, the contemporary of Bob Ross to me was, in terms of like what they did on TV and marketed themselves into, was always the Frugal Gourmet, who has a very dark, ending to his story that we're not going to cover.
I don't even know his story.
Let's not get into it here. Those that know,
Frugal Gourmet is something I've never explored other than I sort of remember him and his chin beard or whatever.
But exactly, that's the type of thing I'm talking about. This guy on television, public access television, public television, ostensibly showing you how to do something,
right?
But really people were watching for entertainment or comfort, and that they became a brand unto themselves.
And if you're sitting at home saying, Agnes, I wonder if you can roll a pie crust, well, it's none of your business.
But anyway, a lot has been said, a lot has been written about Bob Ross. We're not here to provide an extensive documentary on him or his show, but we want to capture the essence, I guess, of why this man meant or means so much to so many. But Quinn, first of all, what is painting?
Well, it's the process at which you put a picture onto paper. You can use colors. You can use... you have to use colors with paint because you need paint, right?
You could use black, I guess, just only black.
Yeah, but it's just it's a process. Is painting,
and people that do it are called like artists, right? Usually, or painters,
specifically painters. Yes. I mean, artist is a broader term, Jeff.
That is pretty broad, right?
Yeah.
Are we artists?
We could be classified as artists.
Be.
We shouldn't be.
do not do that.
But we could be.
We could be if you want to, folks. I guess, but we don't endorse that.
This is a performance art, I suppose.
What a riveting one it is, Quinn.
Well, never be too hard on yourself. That's what I say. If you want to call yourself an artist, I think you should go ahead and call yourself an artist. Even if you make a middling little podcast known as Acid Washed Memories.
But we have to start by talking about a specific technique of painting here. It's called wet on wet, and it's generally done with oil-based paints, which Bob Ross did. You basically put the paint on the canvas, and then you add on top of it before the existing layer dries. And that allows you to blend in certain ways and create sort of a textured look, so to speak. Now, even, this is not the art podcast, because I am by no means any kind of art anything.
You never painted that bird or whatever and sent it back to those people?
If I did, it sucked. Let me put it that way. The best art that I know is Art Donovan.
Yeah.
Okay.
How much does that guy weigh?
But Rembrandt and Monet and even Vincent van Gogh, they did use, not all the time, this technique during their times. And another painter who used this technique in the 20th century was the German-born artist known as Bill Alexander.
Who?
Exactly who. And he would be very upset that people don't know who he is.
I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not some art expert or something.
Yeah, I know, Quinn. Neither am I by any, like I said, Art Donovan. But he was a post-war refugee of Germany. He began professionally painting in the 1940s. And by the 1970s, if we know anything about public television history, PBS had been well established, right? There was NET before that in 1970.
Yeah.
Flipped over to PBS Public Broadcasting.
was cooking in the 70s.
They were cooking,
it's like
literally.
one of their best eras.
It is a great era for PBS. If you're a vintage PBS fan, that's your era.
PBS could be its own podcast.
It could be.
Yeah.
It could be. So anyway, it was a venue for instructional or at least like informative programming, PBS, right? It wasn't like MASH wasn't on PBS, for example, or All in the Family and things like that.
The only entertainment was Masterpiece Theater, like because it was like actual theater. So it's the only thing you could really classify as entertainment that was on the channel.
And some people would not even classify it as such. In fact, I'm more familiar with Monsterpiece Theater myself. Alistair Cookie.
Stop.
It's real. Anyway.
It's funny that PBS allowed Sesame Street to parody one of its own shows. But
well, they can't have too much of a bug up their ass, right?
Oh, what's the difference? Who watches PBS?
Anyway, this gentleman, Bill Alexander, from Germany, now in the U.S., he created and starred in a television show known as The Magic of Oil Painting. And I know this is an audio podcast, but we're going to take a listen to Mr. Alexander here And we'll set
I don't think I've ever watched this man before.
We'll set the stage for you, but we're looking at a painting right now before we play the video that looks like a landscape.
Why does this guy look like a janitor or something?
Well, some people
All
do.
right, I have buttered myself up, and I will fire in.
So
when I use that word fire in,
this
love
gentleman
that word
is wearing
fire
a
in.
light blue shirt.
Yes.
On the left of the screen.
He's much more charismatic than
yes,
our subject here, Bob Ross.
He is. And he is, on the right of the screen is a canvas, and it's a black background to everything, and he's holding a palette, and he is painting using the exact same technique as Bob Ross, except this show is from the 1970s.
This is kind of crappy in comparison.
Well, I think that people don't even, a lot of people, unless you like really get into the rabbit holes, don't know that this ever existed.
I mean, it's just, it looks like the same show just with a guy that I don't care about.
Like a guest host, basically.
Yeah, it's like, who is this? He's very loud.
Yeah, let's take one. Yeah, that is the marked difference here, right? Let's take a quick listen to Bill Alexander.
Hard because I sing all the time. I constantly hum
lovable.
and sing, and
get
when I
it,
finish, the job is done. I don't even notice I did it.
Okay.
You're done?
I can't.
No more Bill Alexander.
Because this is not... So here's the thing, right? Is that I think Bob Ross, in essence, changed the game a bit for this kind of show, right? Because as soon as he's talking too much, you're like, what is this? Like, why is he not, like, letting it breathe and, like, happy thoughts, like, you know?
So do you think that Bob Ross's approach, which we're going to get to, is a better approach for this type of show?
Absolutely.
Okay, fair enough.
This was the wrong approach.
Bob Ross let the painting speak for itself.
How long did this William Alexander last?
That's a great question, Quinn. 8 years, 74 till May of 82. I want you to
I can't even believe he made it to the 80s.
82, yep.
That is gone. The minute of the day is already finished. That's behind us. The wind has blown it away. The trees are bending in that moment.
But meanwhile, another gentleman had been learning this wet-on-wet technique by watching and eventually studying close with Bill Alexander, and his name was Robert Norman Ross.
So he was his protege.
He was his protege.
They knew each other, or he
each other.
He just watched the show and learned to paint or something?
He started by watching the show, and then they knew each other,
Wow, really? So he was educated by the show a little bit.
Yes, he watched the show first.
That's really funny.
Yep. So Bob Ross, we're here to talk about him a little bit. He was born in 1942 in Florida, and he joined the Air Force in 1961. That is the year that Stu Sutcliffe left the Beatles.
I see.
And Bob Ross was stationed in Alaska in the Air Force.
Now, Bob Ross, I'll say this. I didn't know any of this military background.
Oh, yeah.
But I always got the gist that he was a military man because he was like, he looked like he took care of himself, like he was in shape, like so he had some kind of discipline of some kind.
He did look, he came across as a disciplined man.
Yeah.
Mentally disciplined, if nothing else, right?
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Great point. And it was because of his stationing in Alaska that the landscapes, the mountains there made quite an impression on him during his time in the Air Force. So he actually had a position of Master Sergeant. Again, not only am I not an art expert, Quinn, I am not a military expert by any means. But I understand that, like, I guess the stereotype is if you're like a sergeant of some kind, you have to like be tough. You have to like have this image where people
to discipline your men.
Right. And he was a big yeller in the Air Force. And that is why when he got out of the military, he decided that he was not going to yell again. He was going to speak very quietly.
Well, when your job is to yell, I don't think you want to do it on your off time.
You think like auctioneers talk very quietly at home?
Yeah, I would think if you have like a job where you're real loud, like you have to be.
Right.
First of all, you don't want to like mess your throat up while you're while you're off work or whatever, because you have to get when you get older,
workers' comp.
Yeah, because then when you go to work, you can't yell.
Yeah,
and you need to yell to do the job.
What other jobs require yelling? Football coach.
A
lot of yelling.
Anybody who disciplines people, principals
have to yell at times. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're on
even teachers sometimes have to yell.
Yeah, it's not fun. I remember
when you're
dealing
with kids in general. Yeah.
Your parents have to yell.
Yeah, and I have to yell, so you guys get to the damn point.
Anyway, while he was in the military, though, he developed that interest in painting that we mentioned, and he had been trying to learn to paint, but his problem with the instructors that he was studying, they were more into the abstract. And in Bob Ross's exact words here, they tell you what makes a tree, but they wouldn't tell you how to paint a tree.
Okay.
So that gives you an idea of the psyche, right?
I see. Yeah.
He doesn't want this abstract shit. He wants to paint a friggin' tree.
Right.
Who wouldn't? I'd like to know how to paint a tree.
Well, you got to feel it out, Joe. That's what these other people are saying. You got to know the parts, and then you put it together yourself, because then it can be a custom tree. You know,
a custom tree. Yes.
If you just say this is how you make a tree, You're only going to make a tree that looks one way. But
Look
if
at
you
you, Quinn.
give the parts, you can make all sorts of trees.
Heavy, Quinn. Anyway, in the 1970s, he discovered that show, The Magic of Oil Painting, and he was enamored with this technique. And he began studying, like we said, and using this technique himself. And he started selling these paintings of landscapes. And he realized, hey, I am making more money selling my paintings than I am in the Air Force. So he retired from the Air Force in 1981.
Sure, he got a pension, too.
Oh, I'm not sure he
20
did.
years.
20 years is good service. And that's where he studied directly with Bill Alexander for a little bit in the early 80s. And together with a few folk, including his wife at the time, Bob Ross formed his own company with the intent to instruct people how to paint.
Okay.
One of the good things about television, as we all know, if you've been listening to this show,
you can see it.
You can see it. Exactly, yeah. Quinn. Well done.
I knew where you were going there.
This is why we get paid the big bucks here for this. Television being a visual medium, painting also a visual medium.
It is.
Look at that. So he was like, well, why don't I form a happy little TV show? I'm sure that's exactly what he said, right?
That was the exact line.
Yeah, I'm going to get a happy little TV show.
There was a momentous occasion in his home with his wife. Like, it's been dramatized or whatever that word is.
Yeah, dramatized.
Dramatized. Yeah.
Dramamine, one way or another.
and I'm going to do a happy show.
I'm going to do a happy little show.
He didn't yell it.
No, he doesn't yell anymore.
Yeah.
And I said to my wife, I said, why don't we do a happy little show? Oh, and please pass the Dramamine.
So he taped a pilot episode of this show in 1982. If we roll back the footage a little bit here, Bill Alexander's show ended in 1982.
Good.
I like that you just heard of this man about 7 minutes ago and you hate him already.
It's just not right. It just
too loud. Too much.
He's too loud. I don't want the Bob Ross paintings with a loud person.
Yeah, it's like the Frugal Gourmet's personality.
Yeah,
but he's painting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Frugal Gourmet is like crappy Julia Childs.
She's loud too, though.
Yeah, but
drunk.
She's lovable.
She is lovable,
right? It's like Julia Childs. That's the thing. It's like it takes the right personality with these kind of shows. If you ask me,
any TV show,
you
sure.
watch Julia, and she's kind of like she just has her own way of doing things, and you kind of like it's endearing, right?
Absolutely.
But then you watch Frugal Gourmet, and you're like, this feels like
problem with the frug. Outside of the things that we're not going to mention,
I don't
obviously.
know the things.
I know.
But I feel like I'm watching a guy trying to sell me something.
Oh, well, you are. Yeah, he would endorse certain products.
He seems like a salesman, not a cook.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Julia's like, I went to France and this, and it's like it's charming because she's not trying to sell you anything, right?
I went to France
and I learned this recipe. Like, you know how she is.
Folks, if you came here expecting only Bob Ross talk, don't you worry. You're getting Quinn's Julia Child impression here.
I mean, that's how she talks.
It is how she talks, only on Acid Wash Memories. Anyway, the pilot was taped in Virginia and picked up by PBS. It later moved to Muncie, Indiana in 1983. Muncie. And
is that related to Muzzy in any way?
I hope not. Yeah. And the name of this show, The Joy of Painting. So,
what a nice name.
I think it's a beautiful name. It's Magic of Oil Painting was nice too, but a little too verbose, right?
Yeah.
Magic of Oil Painting. It's got
joy in it. It can't be bad.
Right. That's true. This other one had magic. This has the joy, though. So one of the things about this show that I think a lot of people would agree is the intro music is really, really good. There's been various videos of the intro over the years of the seasons, but the actual music is really good and that we have to listen to it. Okay?
Hit it. God, it's so happy.
This is the one we're watching is where he's in like the painter's like outfit, like he's house painting.
This is like their fancy CG intro.
Yeah, it is.
It's like, look, I'm over the green screen.
Look at it.
Yeah.
Look how calming this intro is, though.
This song's
Weather
great.
Channel. This song's amazing. I have some notes about this song. There he is in front of his canvas.
You know what's funny? He's like more fun in this intro than he is in the entire show.
It's the most he moves and does things. Yeah, you're right.
Smiley and shit.
Yeah, it's true. So this song, by the way, is called Interlude by Larry Owens, who was a songwriter and a musician. And there is
Did he know Bob Ross? Was this like I made this for you?
I don't think so. Not on like a personal favor type of level. Larry Owens, by the way, there's a full version of this you can look up. There is like a 3-minute version of this song.
It seems like something you'd find in a record store in the 70s, like playing in the background, and a lot of wood.
Yeah, a lot of wood.
A lot of wood
8-tracks,
paneled appliances.
That type of thing. So here's the deal with this guy, Larry Owens. He was actually working for Network Music, who was a production music.
Network Music.
Yeah, it's called. Production music company. I'm well familiar with these because all the crap I've looked into over the years for like our theme songs and shit like that. But anywho, I found this very interesting. We were talking 10 episodes or so ago about soap operas.
Yes.
And one of the intros that we really, really liked was The Bold and the Beautiful, and Larry Owens wrote that song.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my! That Bold and the Beautiful opening is unbelievably good.
Cinematography wise and the
That's
song.
one I didn't really remember until we did that show again, and I was like, wow, this is actually on par with All My Children. Like, this is actually good.
The intro is awesome. Larry Owens. So anyway, we're going to talk about the joy of painting now, and I'm going to tell you something in a very PBS vein. I don't know that we even need to throw to commercial on this one.
Well, I mean, it's PBS.
This is a PBS
there is
episode.
No commercial on PBS
Right,
other than buy the tote bag.
Yeah, well, we do buy the tote bag. You'll get clips, though, of Bob Ross as we go
plug
here.
the Patreon because that's the very much PBS. Like, hey, can we get some donations here?
Now, we don't have an Acid Wash Memories Patreon, by the way, and we never will.
Yeah.
But we do appreciate you listening here. But I don't think there's a need for a break on this. So the whole point of this episode, folks, is to kind of take you back to maybe when you were a kid or a teenager or even an adult watching Bob Ross. And again, trying to figure out why the man left such an impression, which we're going to get to. But the format of the show was literally the same thing as the Magic of Oil painting.
It's identical.
One major difference, and that's the host.
Yes. It's basically a guy says, I'm going to paint this, and then he starts painting it,
Yes.
and then it ends like when he finishes it.
I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And this is something interesting. Bob Ross actually painted 3 copies of every painting that he did on the show. So he would initially do kind of like a rough one that he called the reference copy, and that would be off to the side, not on camera. And he would look at that as he was doing the live one, which was called the TV copy.
Now, did he donate all these paintings, or what happened to them?
There's a whole story with his artwork.
I just mean that, like, specifically the TV paintings. Like,
He didn't. I think they were all kept. It's very rare to find the TV ones. But he would then make a detailed copy, even more detailed than the TV one.
like
that they would
best one where he's not rushing to get it done in half an hour.
Exactly right. And yeah, you know what? Why don't we talk about that for a second here? I'm not an artist. Quinn's not an artist. If you're an artist out there or into art, like an art historian, because people are.
I know, but like my mom paints, and like also my grandfather painted too.
The one that invented 911.
Yeah.
That's a kind of a real thing.
That's not really what
It's
happened.
semi-real,
It's
though.
not real.
There's a kernel of truth.
He worked there.
He
Anyway.
didn't work at 911.
No, but he helped arrange it. Anyway, the point is my understanding of painting, it's not something you do in 30 minutes.
No, that was the whole point, right? Just
Right. It's actually like kind of impressive that he can do that in 30 minutes.
It is, and this is where, again, I'm basing this on only what I have conjured up over the years, not from my own opinions as an art critic. I want to be clear about that. From what I understand, people that are very into art do not view this as good necessarily.
No, but I don't think that's really the intention of the show.
It's not.
Like, I never got the impression that Bob Ross is like, I'm a fancy schmancy artist, right?
No, it's the opposite. It's like you could do this too.
The whole point is it's like a home hobby project, right? Like, and that's how it's presented. It's not presented like this, this is going to be in a museum or something.
No,
right?
exactly right. He's not here making classics, right?
Yeah.
He's literally saying, see how I'm doing this? You can do this too.
Right. It's just giving people some like encouragement if they're interested in the hobby. I think
exactly
is really what it is.
So to the common person, the lay person, which I am one in this case with art, to me it's really friggin' impressive that he can do this in 30 minutes. I'm like, holy shit.
Well, see, and that's what I wonder from like real art people actually, like how is that a thing like you do in art school or something where you have to do something real fast, like just say you're think on your feet or whatever? I don't know. Like, but like, is what he's doing, is this like almost like a parlor trick that he can do it this quick? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Or is this like bullshit? Like, it's not good. I mean, like, it's not good that he can paint that fast.
That's the thing that I don't have an answer to.
Yeah.
I just know that it's not like art critics are looking around like, wow, this is great. You know what I mean? And to be fair, on a purely like volumatic scope, a lot of his stuff is very similar.
Yeah. But I guarantee you this, whatever one he did for the first episode,
yeah,
I bet you that painting, specifically the one that was painted on the show, not the reference, not the detailed, the one on the show, I bet you that's like worth like millions of dollars just because it's like, it's got that connotation of being painting number one from the Bob Ross show.
I want to say, and I'll have to have this checked in editing, and Dave Meltzer, I'm sure, will be happy to correct me if I'm wrong, that some guy rather recently bought the first one, and I think his asking price to sell it is $9 million.
Yeah, and that makes sense just from its fame.
Well, because, well, actually, well, you're right. He, the guy's, his name was Ryan Nelson, and the painting is called A Walk in the Woods. And the guy, Ryan Nelson, he bought it in September of 2023. So it's a real full Nelson, if that makes sense.
He painted approximately 30,000 paintings by his own estimation, so It's not like they're scarce.
I mean, when you can do them in half an hour, it's not that.
You're doing 3 at a time,
half an hour for your entire life. It's not that impressive. Like,
it's not. But anyway, those of you that have seen the show know what this is. There's a very specific point in the beginning of every episode where he goes over all the colors that he uses.
Yeah, he kind of does a review of like, this is what I'm using, right?
And I wanted to give you a list of all those colors in keeping with the Bob Ross tradition.
Now, were they always the same, or were they modified per the painting?
So his palette didn't always have all of them, but he had a fixed amount of colors that he used.
So he put a number limitation on how many variations or colors he was allowed to use in the painting?
I guess for whatever he had in mind to paint. So here they are: alizarin crimson, bright red, cadmium yellow, dark sienna, Indian yellow, midnight black, phthalo blue, phthalo green, Prussian blue. Prussian, yes. Sap green, which I always remember that. Van Dyke brown, yellow ochre, and of course, titanium white.
We're going to start out here with titanium white, phthalo green, Prussian blue, Van Dyke brown, alizarin crimson, sap green, cad yellow, and permanent red.
I always remember this image of just this man. I was fascinated by this man holding a palette and like telling me all these colors. I'm like, what does this all mean? It's like honestly, number 2 fan brush and all that.
In
the
age of like digital art, a lot of people now they draw like on a like, you know, like people who are like really in art right nowadays, they draw on like a big tablet, right? Like that's how you do it now, and you have the palette on the tablet and you move. This is
kids these days.
This is how but this is how I think even in like art schools now and stuff, this is like how it's done. It's kind of impressive looking back that this guy just has like an old school ass like a fucking palette.
It's awesome, man.
Like, and he just knows how to like populate it with what he needs, and like, you know, there's no digital. He can't just like pop up another color.
No, it's true.
Yeah.
And if you look at the way, this is where I'm still impressed. If you look at those fixed amount of colors, and then you look at the way this wet on wet technique is able to create like reflections in the water and, you know, texture in the sky. And I was always impressed by the way he did mountains with like a knife.
Yeah, he puts. Yeah, I would always, that would impress me too.
And this is much different than the traditional palette knife. It is not thin and flimsy. It's a firm palette knife. And with this, we can make fantastic things happen.
He seemed to have a good awareness, and I'm sure this is just normal artists know this, but like a good awareness of like if he combined 2 colors, he like would instinctively know like this is what it's going to look like. He would see it almost before it was there.
I think you're right. I guess
he would comment on it before. That's how I knew he knew what it would look like.
I think it's similar because I can't relate in an artistic way on that end, but as a musician, you know what chords are going to sound good together in sequence
Maybe it's the
or
equivalent
notes.
To chords for painters, yeah.
And again, if you are an artist out there and you know what the hell you're talking about, please let us know, because we're not pretending that we know, okay, at all. But yeah, I thought as a kid, I thought his paintings were very impressive, and they looked textured.
The other thing I always thought that was very impressive about what he did is sometimes I think this would happen in some of the episodes I would see. Like sometimes you could tell he made a mistake.
Yep.
And he knew how to like get himself out of it. Like, and I always thought that was like super, especially considering it's like it has to be 30 minutes or whatever. I'd be like, that is so impressive to me that he would like figure out a way out of it or like turn it into something else. Or
what was one of his catchphrases? Like, in life there are no mistakes, there's just happy accidents or something like that, right?
We don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents.
That was his little phrase.
That was his little phrase.
The point is that you would see him live make a mistake, and he would just kind of like turn it into something else. Like I was like, how the fuck do you know how to do that? Right?
There is a craft to this.
Yeah.
And
we're looking at them like while we're talking here, and they're like very beautiful, actually.
I think they are. And again, I think that's the whole point, is people like you and me that don't know how to paint are supposed to think these are beautiful.
Now, the thing is, a lot of these are, because they're landscapes, and I think we've kind of touched a little bit on, these aren't like masterpieces or anything.
No, they're not really.
But, I mean, these are like paintings you would find at Sears in the 80s or something for your like dining room or something like that.
You know what? You are right about that.
Yeah.
I never thought of that, but you're right. And he did have limitations by his own admission. He didn't draw people.
Yeah, I never seen in person.
It's
ever.
very, very rare that he would draw he would occasionally have like a cabin.
Did he ever, in his spare time, did he do portraits or anything?
You know, I don't think so. I think that he was not a portrait painter by any means. I know that even he would occasionally have guest artists come on to do something different that he couldn't do. So he did not, and this is one of the reasons I like him, he did not pretend that he was like this amazing artist, like you said earlier.
But I think that was part of his charm, right? I think the whole point of the show was to be like, even you could do this,
even
right?
You could do
like,
this.
I'm just some guy with an afro. I'm not like some Rembrandt or anything. Like,
he's not a Rembrandt.
It's like, but hey, I can make these nice pictures and put them in my dining room.
It's not. Yeah, I'm serious. I'm glad you brought up his hair though, because that's his defining characteristic.
Yeah. So this would always. It was weird to me. It would make it spooky because I'd be like, how old is this? Right? Because it's like I couldn't even conceive. It's funny, when I was a kid, I thought all of it was from the 70s just because of the afro. I did not think, first of all, any of it was within the 90s. That was out of my mind.
Yeah.
Maybe the early 80s.
Right.
Like the 90s, are you kidding me?
The thing about his hair, some people know this, is it was actually naturally straight, a little wavy, and he had permed it, did the afro in, I guess, maybe early.
When it was popular.
Right. When he did the first episode, at least, and once he caught on, he was like, I hate this hair. I want to change it back. But it was so identified with him. His real hair is just like...
yeah, that's what he... Because, I mean, he's a military man. I don't see him having an afro in the military.
No, in fact, in the Air Force, he looked really friggin' cool.
That looks like a 50s haircut right there.
It was.
A big flip up.
Late 50s, like early 60s, Teddy Boy haircut. Yeah. James Dean.
Yeah.
Remember that song?
No, he looks like James Dean.
James Dean.
That stupid song, yeah.
Available in the archives. James Dean. But yeah, the hair, and then always like the...
That's funny that he just did it for the first, but he got pinned on him.
Sucked into it,
so
yeah.
he had to the whole run have this afro.
It's pretty much true. I mean, it's literally in his logo to this day. So his persona I wanted to talk about, it's very much a deliberate persona.
Right.
In the vein, we've talked about both of these men, Harlan Sanders, Dave Thomas, KFC and Wendy's respectively, for those of you out there. Those are cultivated personas.
Right.
Like Harlan Sanders was a businessman.
Yeah, but was Dave much of a cult, or was that just Dave and they just embellished Dave?
It was cultivated. He was still a businessman, right?
Yeah.
Bob Ross, some people don't like to hear this, right? Because he was a good guy. He was a businessman, and he knew what he was doing. This wasn't accidental.
Yeah, I mean, he couldn't just go up there every week and make paintings for free, and just, how would he eat?
Right.
It was he also would comment that he has a kid and stuff. I'm like, he's got to make some money, right?
Yeah.
It's he can't just do nothing.
He didn't get the money from PBS, let's put it that way.
And PBS notoriously doesn't really pay a lot or anything.
No, they're the ones asking us for money all the time.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have the money to pay Bob Ross millions of dollars for his time.
So he marketed himself. That's exactly what this persona was. But I think the reason that persona worked is because it was the opposite of what you said, Bill Alexander. And again, I know Bill Alexander's show ran for 8 years, but it ran for 8 years on PBS.
Right.
It wasn't exactly in the pop culture zeitgeist.
No offense, 8 years on PBS feels like nothing.
Right, we could do that.
PBS is the land of the long-term shows, right?
Nova.
Yeah, Nova.
Shit like
Sesame
that.
Street.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Nova.
Yeah, Nova.
American Masters.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been on for 30 years.
Antique Roadshow.
Yeah.
The point we're trying to make here is not to besmirch PBS, obviously, but to say that what Bill Alexander did certainly set a template for Bob Ross to follow, and no doubt Bob Ross literally copied the show. Let's be honest here. He knew what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if I could take more than 30 minutes. I don't even know if I could take 15 minutes of Bill Alexander yelling at me like
No,
that.
but Bob Ross, I could, like, I've watched marathons of Bob Ross, like, just calmly, like, while, like, I was hanging out in the living room or something.
I've been with you.
Yeah.
My 7-year-old now, when he was about 4, we put it on YouTube, and he'd be like, I want to watch the guy that paints. He didn't know his name, or the kid didn't care.
He likes those shows. He likes anything where something's being put together.
It's true, yeah. So he loved that. But anyway, Bill Alexander, we're going to finish up his story here. He got very testy as the years went on. Because
he looked testy just in that video. It's like,
he had a hard life. No, but like in all seriousness, he accused Bob Ross of stealing from him. And he's like, I taught him the wet on... No, I invented wet on wet, is what he said.
I have news for you, William Alexander. Nobody cares. We like Bob Ross.
Right. It's just all about the personality in something like this.
That's like such a stupid... He stole from it. It's like everyone's like... So
like, what do you want us to do about it?
It's not like everyone watching is thinking, "Wow, Bob Ross is like some revolution. He invented landscape painting or something."
Yeah,
like,
he never said that.
Yeah,
he did even.
Nor did anyone think that.
Right, and no one even contemplated any of this. He did even. I believe it was season 2. Listen to me now. He did credit Bill Alexander, and he thanked him in one of his episodes.
I'm sure he did, because that's what he used. He would do stuff like that. He would like acknowledge people like on the show while he was like painting.
I hand over now that almighty brush to almighty man, and that is Bob Ross. Congratulate you.
Thank you very much, Bill. We look forward to seeing you right here on this channel for the joy of painting each week.
I also love the patter that he would have, I want to put a happy little tree over here. And that's like the thing that he's most, notable for. There were references to that way before the big Twitch stream of 2015, which we'll talk about. Even Family Guy. Remember? There's like a Family Guy cutaway
Family
joke.
Guy always references everything, so...
All right, now we're going to use a fan brush here, and I want you to take some Hunter Green, and we're going to put a happy little bush right down over here in the corner there. And that'll just be our little secret. And if you tell anyone that that bush is there, I will come to your house and I will cut you.
The point here with Bob Ross is that he just had a certain something. Every now and then, somebody breaks into the pop culture zeitgeist in a weird manner that is kind of quirky and offbeat, much like a Dave Thomas. There's really no reason why Dave Thomas should have been as popular and fondly remembered as he is.
I would argue that you have contributed to the Dave Thomas hype.
I am just but a small part, Quinn.
There's a couple of things in the zeitgeist that contribute, like the meme DDR Dave Thomas and other various Dave Thomas related things that have contributed, but like I would definitely attribute you as a Dave Thomas.
I don't think I'm that influential. Am I really? But I think when people think of Dave Thomas, they think nostalgia, they think their childhood, they think comfort. I think it's much in a similar vein to Fred Rogers.
Well, that was the other thing I was going to go to here with the Bob Ross, is that he has such a Mr. Rogers vibe, in a sense that like it's just so chill. Like when you're watching it, it's like that's why like sometimes kids wouldn't like these shows, because they were too chill. Like they were not. And
that might have been your problem as a kid, right?
But here's the thing also, Joe, is that Mr. Rogers was explicitly for kids. It's almost kind of crazy that he had no, like, wacky, like, it wasn't crazy all the time.
Right, like, that's what we talked about.
Bob Ross, this show does not seem to be exactly kid-oriented. You can watch it with a kid. It doesn't have any, like, cursing or anything crazy in it.
Imagine if it did.
Yeah.
And we'll just make the side of the mountain there with the palette knife. Just glide it on. I suppose this is the point in the program where that newfangled artificial intelligence is supposed to make me cuss and sound way out of character. Well, I just don't think we'll do that here today, huh? How about that?
My point is that it's more for, it feels more for like a chill out, like after a long day of work or something.
Yeah.
Like it feels like it's framed in that way. I can't explain it any other way than that.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because Bob Ross, even when he was still alive, people were already, falling asleep to his show. That was already a thing, like when the show was on contemporaneously.
Yeah.
And he was quoted once saying, like, I'm really glad to hear that there are people that have never seen a full episode of my show.
Right, because that feels like the intent. The more you watch and you see how all the episodes are patterned, they're almost like a lullaby.
They are.
Right? It's like they really are like a lullaby.
Yeah.
And it's just funny looking back at it that it seems almost intentional, right?
I think there is some savvy employed there by him. I think he knew, at least after the first season or two, in the early 80s, I think he knew that the majority of his audience was not painting along with him. And I think he harnessed that.
It became more than a painting show. It became just a kind of like good messages, good vibes, and just kind of like almost like a calming song, like a Beach Boys song or something.
Which one? In My Room or one of them?
More like lullaby style ones.
Beach Boys, famous for their lullabies, yes.
Some of their songs are very like calming.
Boring,
to me.
yeah. Boring. That's what I would say.
I wouldn't call them boring, but yeah, whatever.
What about James Dean?
Yeah, that's terrible.
James Dean.
The show ran for a really long time. The show ran from 1982 until 1994, May 17th. What people didn't know, because the show did not return for the 94-95 season, is that he had been battling lymphoma very privately for several years.
While he was doing the show.
Into the 90s. And he made one last television appearance on the pilot episode of a show that I had never heard of called The Adventures of Elmer and Friends. Kid show.
And that's actually a quality of like a lot of the PBS show people is like they weren't really in it for the money. This is back in the day where the people involved with PBS really were doing it for a public service, and if they could help in any way, they would just do it.
Exactly right.
You know what I mean? Like,
and that's definitely what this is. I want to take a quick listen to this here.
Mm-hmm.
In this, Bob Ross, who was very sick by this point, this is filmed in 1995. Is in his old Joy of Painting studio, or a facsimile of, right? Mm-hmm. He's got a wig on because, he was going through some stuff. But he basically uses this opportunity to somewhat say goodbye to everybody.
Oh, like a farewell.
Yeah.
I'd like to say just thanks for this time today. The chance to share your world along the way. One day
sad.
soon,
I know.
our paths may cross again. Until then, God bless, my friend.
Is that him when he was a kid?
Yeah.
Wow. Like this is like showing it like he's dying or something on a kid's show?
Well, this came out after he had passed away because he passed away on July 4th. July 4th, 1995.
Okay, because I was wondering why it was being presented like a eulogy or something.
That's why. He was only 52 years old.
So sad.
Yeah. He would have gone on probably for several more years doing this show. Maybe 10 more years. Maybe more.
I feel like if the show kept going, though, I'll be honest with you.
Go ahead.
I think it would have gotten really meta and weird. Because I think by the late 90s, people would have picked up on how kind of like this is a strange show.
True. It might have been an artifact by then of like a bygone time.
But to the point where the show would start acknowledging it, like, you know what I mean? Because it's like just out of like, we get it. Like, wink. Like, like even Bob Ross would probably like get into like joke about maybe make appearances where his hair was normal or something.
Yeah,
like,
straight hair, right?
Yeah.
Show up on like Mad TV or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So Bob Ross had already done 7 paintings in preparation for doing that next season of Joy of Painting that never came to be. You hardcore Joy of Painting fans will know that there was just released The Joy of Painting with Nicholas Hankins, Bob Ross's unfinished season. Where
Who the hell is Nicholas Hankins?
That's really immaterial to the story.
I know, but who?
He was the guy that
was he like the producer or something?
No, he was the guy that studied the wet on wet technique.
Oh, okay.
And became a certified Bob Ross instructor or whatever. Yes, that's a real thing.
Excuse me.
It's not really. Yeah, it's they have whole marketing.
Bob had to make a dime somehow.
He had to make several dimes.
Yeah.
Man.
Hi there, I'm Bob Ross, certified instructor Nicholas Hankins, and I've been working on a new project and I can't wait to tell you about it. You may not know this, but before Bob Ross died, he was working on his paintings for his next Joy of Painting series. Sadly, though, he didn't get back into the studio to film them.
But anyway, that just came out very recently. And after he passed away, I feel like for a good 5-10 years, he just faded into obscurity.
Yeah, so that's the thing, right? Is like when that show ended, I feel like you're right. It just disappeared off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
Like it was something that if you were reminded of, it was like almost like this weird triggered like 80s, 90s memory.
Yep.
And it was just like, oh, that was weird but you wouldn't like really go into it or anything. You wouldn't care.
Yep. And then Family Guy was one of the first things that I remember referencing it.
Like acknowledging that it existed. And yeah, that was like kind of a weird show.
Yeah, because, the clip has been dropped in, I'm sure. And then I remember buying a T-shirt in 2005 or
I remember
6.
you wearing said T-shirt.
Yeah, do you?
Yeah.
And it had Bob Ross on it, said Happy Little Trees on it.
Right.
And that was...
I thought that was just like you getting like a cheeky T-shirt, like a Spencer style, you know what I mean? Like I just thought that was you being funny.
Well, I
didn't really think you were like a watcher of this or anything.
I had been, but I got it to be funny.
Yeah.
Like I got it because it was like, oh, that was old, haha, and I was like 20 years old or whatever. I thought it was funny.
Those were popular back when we were in that age group. This wearing shirts referencing like vague shit from like 15, 20 years ago.
It's still popular to do that, except the stuff that it references is stuff we remember now.
It's not vague to us.
It's not vague to us, right? But it was really...
It'd be like somebody wearing a Friends T-shirt. It'd be like, what? What? Like,
or like Caroline in the City or something.
Yeah. Well, that would actually be funny.
That's the type of thing,
But
though.
the problem is that like back then, stuff was just forgotten, even if it was uber popular.
True.
So it's like, it'd be like for us, somebody
Friends.
wearing a Friends or Seinfeld. Yeah, like, exactly.
Oh, that's weird. But anyway, it really was the Twitch revival. In 2015, that was.
This was so out of left field, but this was the magic of the beginning of Twitch to me, is that a lot of weird stuff like this was allowed to happen.
Being the
personally,
keyword.
Like as a gamer, but also because Twitch had other things back then, I was like enamored by early Twitch because I was like, this is fascinating. It's like the people making their own TV. Like it's like there's like so much interesting crap on here, right?
There you go.
And so the concept of a Bob Ross marathon, which is what we got, it wasn't too out of left field,
right?
But it was one of the like hallmark things, and it kind of touched a nerve, and it got very popular, and I think even more popular than whoever did the channel, because I think it was like Bob Ross Official or something, right?
I don't know if it was at first.
I thought it had some official affiliation at some point.
I think that they were behind it. Yeah.
Yeah.
The estate and the company or whatever.
Right. And so this starts airing, and like there was the initial marathon, and then for many years after, it would only be on Mondays for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Right. And like this whole, I think it's still on because I follow it.
Good.
Because it costs nothing to just like turn a computer on that like goes on Mondays for 24 hours and just runs this, right? It's it's not that complicated.
No.
But it's still funny how like this resonated into it leaked into the mainstream.
That was a big cause of the revival of the Bob Ross brand. I remember you and I, we lived together at the time, and I remember us watching this with several other people.
It was all over the place. Everyone was talking about it. It's like, you see this thing on Twitch? They're doing a Bob Ross marathon for a week or something.
You had this thing with one of our female friends. You guys were watching it. I was there too, and you kept, anytime he painted part of it good, and then he did something else, you're like, ruined. Remember? Like you kept,
I don't even remember.
You kept yelling ruined.
Oh, really?
And then she was doing it also. Yeah. And ruined, and then he would fix it again. You know what I mean?
I was always fascinated by his fixes.
Well, because it would look like, what the hell? This guy just painted this awesome thing. Why is there this big streak across it and turn into a mountain?
Yeah, exactly. It was just like fascinating.
Yeah, so how the hell did you do that?
Yeah, I don't know. It was like a magic trick or something.
It really was. And a lot of people have said that, and I think used to this day, Joy of Painting, Bob Ross, as what is known, as the kids say, as ASMR or awesomer.
Yes, it was a early form of like modern ASMR.
It is.
Like absolutely. Now people make their own ASMR channels. There's a big market for it.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. Like,
we will not be doing an episode on that, by the way.
No. But Bob Ross definitely was some like early like were calling this ASMR.
Yeah,
like,
they
this
did.
is like what it is.
It was,
right?
though. Bob Ross's legacy lives on to this day, which I find to be quite remarkable, because if you really think about what it was, and I'm not downplaying what it was, but if you really think about what it was, it's a low-budget television show with a quirky fella painting for a half hour.
Yeah.
That's like the bones of it, right? That's literally what it is.
It had a local edge to it, and what I mean by that is that it wasn't about mainstream painting. It was about hobbyist, local DIY style painting, which is a weird thing in a time when really only mainstream stuff made it onto television.
Yeah.
Right? And like the fact that there was this man here doing a local DIY style painting for half an hour every week or whatever it was kind of weird.
It was really weird. Do you think that he caught on with people because of the age that they were when they first saw him? I'm trying to put my finger on it. Why is he so fondly remembered?
I think because people around the country, painting's still a hobby that people enjoy.
Right, with no aspiration to do it professionally.
Yeah. And I think that this was one of the first shows on television, just like Julia Childs, where people enjoy cooking.
Right.
This was one of the first shows on television to address it as a hobby. And more people are doing it as a hobby than are doing it professionally. Therefore, it's popular, right?
And not be condescending.
It respected it, right? It wasn't like Bob Ross would be like, "This is crappy," in actuality, but like whatever, right?
Yeah, right.
Like it was like giving it a little bit of like respect, right?
And respecting the viewer too,
right?
Not talking down to them and not trying to put themselves above.
And that always made the best shows as far as like an instructional style show, like we said with Julia Childs or whatever, right? It's just any of those where it was just, as long as they're not talking down to you, people kind of dig it.
Much in the vein, like we said, of a Mr. Rogers.
Yeah. And the presentation is the other aspect, is the fact that it became, for even non-painting people, it just became like comforting and like very calming, like the show in general.
To this day, maybe not this past year, but like recently, in my late 30s, I have put it on late at night before I went to bed, just on YouTube. Just throw on an episode.
Yeah.
Just have it on real quick. Just calm myself down, you know?
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with that. And what we wanted to do here, folks, in this, I don't know if this is an odd episode of Acid Wash Memories, is it? I mean, it's not odd.
It's definitely an Acid Wash memory.
It is. It didn't have a commercial break, but again, PBS. This is a PBS episode, so
right?
we couldn't have
it. How are you not going to throw a Dave Thomas commercial into this like you always do?
Don't tempt me, Quinn. Yeah. But we really do.
Watch this right here instead.
Imagine,
like late.
Like we just go to break right here.
Dave's painting a brand new sandwich here at Wendy's.
I decided to be an artist. Needs more mustard.
And Bob Ross is here to help.
Use your fan brush and just lightly dab it on.
Thanks, Bob. You know, I could sure go for a Wendy's old-fashioned hamburger right now.
Well, why don't you grab me a good old classic double while I take this brush and just beat the devil out of it.
Head on over to Wendy's and try the new crossover between two fondly remembered figures of your youth, sandwich thing.
And now we return to more Acid Washed Memories.
Welcome back to Acid Wash Memory. No, we really did just want to give you guys a little stroll down, maybe not even a stroll, a leisurely walk down memory lane.
Yeah, I feel like we tackled this episode in a manner of a Bob Ross episode where it was the calm talking about it and stuff.
Well, because I think Bob Ross would have wanted it that way. No, I don't know, but I mean, I think that he isn't a bombastic person.
No,
and he isn't particularly funny. Right,
yeah.
So the way,
but he seemed like a nice guy,
right?
And he seemed like a family man. I remember his son would be on the show sometimes.
Yeah.
And, he just seemed like a normal fellow that got the privilege to host a show on public television.
Just ripped off Bill Alexander, much to that guy's chagrin, and too friggin' bad, Billy.
Yeah,
sorry.
Well, it bothers me that he like had a problem with him. Like that actually upsets me.
Well, we all know how Bill Alexander can be, Quinn. Yeah. But, folks, we did hope you liked this one. What we really want to hear from you, well, a couple of things. Here's your homework. Okay, this is public television we're talking about here. Is
gotta do some work.
Do some work now. If you are an art person, and what I mean by that is if you know about art, the way that people know about music, the way people know about film, right? Or literature. If you're an art person, give us your honest appraisal of Bob Ross. We can all take it. We're all grown-ups here now.
We know things.
We can do that. But if you're not an art person, what'd you think of Bob Ross? Do you know who the hell Bob Ross is? People in England are like, who? We had like Freaky Pete or whatever, probably, right?
Watch, there was the English version. Or Australian
Sir
version
Thomas
or something.
Yeah. God. I don't know. It would be.
Sir John.
Yeah, Sir John's. Sir John's of South Brunswick. Yeah. All right, anyway. For that.
Yeah.
Anyway, give us your memories of Bob Ross. Did you watch it on? Did you flip across it on PBS as a kid like I did and become enamored with it, or did you not care at all like Quinn until you were an adult? You know, and it was on Twitch, which is also most of the population too. It's a split, I think.
I really think when it aired a lot. If you were a kid when it aired, I don't know if you were. You probably were more like me than you were like Joe.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
what is this? And you would just like change it.
I was rather unique in that way, but
plus it was scary because it looked old.
Well, it didn't scare me. I just like the paint colors and stuff and the big palette. But folks, we want to hear your memories of Bob Ross, Joy of Painting, or even The Magic of Oil Painting. Did you watch that one when it was new? Let us know if you're a big Bill Alexander fan.
Bill Alexander.
And we know that we're leaving out like all the detailed behind the scenes business stuff here, and that was an intentional choice on my part. There's a whole like backstory with the business end of this, not worth getting into on this program here.
I see.
Okie doke.
More of a tribute episode.
More of a tribute to Bob Ross and the joy of painting. So until next time, make sure you keep your trees very happy. We will be back next week for something completely different.
Absolutely.
Not magical oil painting or anything like that. Until that time, be sure to follow us on Twitter at AWM Podcast. Join our happy little Facebook group and leave us a review if you don't mind on your podcast app of choice. Until next time, however, it's Joe Morata and Michael Quinn. We'll see you next week for more Acid Wash Memories.
See ya.
Like what you heard? Be sure to leave a review and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. We will see you next week.